Hi, this is Denise.
Hey, this is Maggie.
Welcome to our podcast, Candor and Courage at Work.
Denise and I have known each other for a long time, a couple of decades, HR pros, and we thought it might be helpful if we got together and shared some of the things that we've learned along the way.
That's right, Maggie. Many struggle with being candid and being courageous, and we just want to use what we've learned to help you use those traits in your daily work life.
Here's hoping that makes you more successful. And here we go. Welcome to the second part of our two-part series with our first ever guest, Kent Vaughn.
Kent shared a great deal with us in last episode 10, and so we're looking forward to hearing more from Kent today about courage.
So we did the full introduction of you in the last episode and just wanted to reiterate for our listeners and on our behalf, our deep appreciation for you being here, but also wanted to open up with a reminder to folks that you're an acclaimed author of some books. We'll include those in our notes, and those include Everyone Can Lead, The 3 Keys of Execution, and the Get Clear Leadership series. So a couple of things that we really didn't touch on in the introduction in episode 10 was the fact that you earned your BS in Business Administration and Finance and an MBA from the University of Alabama.
Yeah, they love it. My students love it. Tennessee when I talk about that.
I got to tell you, when you announced to the audience last episode that you were a professor at Haslam, I thought, now, how does that work?
Yeah, I've had a couple students bring me, Tennessee things. Like I said, I'll wear this or use this on campus.
Yes.
Yeah. And I bet you a certain football game a year or so ago is where you really got the gifts.
Oh, indeed. Absolutely indeed.
So earlier in your career, you served as a Soviet military analyst with the U.S. Army. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
And that included a 2.5-year assignment near the East German border.
Mm-hmm.
So folks in our listening audience that may not think about the Cold War
Mm-hmm.
and may not have as clear a recollection as I do, for example, of the wall falling and Germany reunifying and so forth, I, in thinking about courage, think about those kinds of experiences. And of course, I think fondly about all those folks that serve or have served in our military and just know that those day in, day out assignments require courage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a skill built in that setting that we hope to really parlay into providing some perspective for our listeners and building courage as leaders. Couple of other things that we didn't touch on last time that I thought would be good to include this time are some of the really remarkable achievements as a goal-oriented individual, and in fact, just having the mindset of being goal-oriented. If you ever email with Kent, one of the things that you'll notice is that he's got a goal to impact 1 million leaders in 2025. That's this year.
Mm-hmm.
We're like more than halfway through the year. And that's a remarkable goal.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not entirely remarkable against the backdrop of some of the other achievements. His first black belt at age 40.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Ran a marathon at 45.
Mm-hmm.
Completed a mile swim at 50. And participated in multiple sprint triathlons at 55. So that's pretty remarkable. And I've had the pleasure of meeting your wife, the love of your life.
Indeed.
That's how you always introduce her.
Yeah.
And congratulate you on having been married for over 35 years. I know that you're enjoying the 3 children and especially the grandparent status with 2 grandchildren.
They are something else, I'll tell you. Amazing. Yeah.
I know you made some reference to your sons and riding motorcycles and selling the motorcycles when your sons turned 13 or your oldest son turned 13, because leaders really do rise to the occasion through their actions,
Mm-hmm.
even more than their words. And I think about, especially as a grandparent now, you're watching that whole process repeat itself, but with a great benefit of not being the parent, right?
Yes. Yes.
And and against that backdrop and thinking of the children and the grandchildren, I think a lot of leaders consider the sense of responsibility that they have to their teams much in the same way that parents
Mm-hmm.
look at their children and maybe their grandchildren once removed from that parental responsibility. But can you give us a little insight into maybe some of those analogies for our listeners that are parents and have walked that path versus those, in the workplace where you've got to maintain those professional boundaries? And so, are there some distinctions that would be well served for our leaders to keep in mind? I'm thinking mostly around like emotional boundaries and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. But any thoughts along those lines?
Well, there's one that jumps out my mind, and that is, are your children safe with me? If I'm their leader, are they safe
Mm-hmm.
in every conceivable way? If you have children of any age, certainly old enough to work, you're sending them off somewhere, right? And you're trusting that they'll be safe there, and emotionally and physically and spiritually or whatever else, right? So I think a lot about this idea of, are they safe? Do they know they're safe? Am I incredibly careful with my own personal behavior and actions, et cetera, et cetera? Because as Stephen Covey said, as we mentioned him in the previous podcast, you can't talk yourself out of something you behaved yourself into.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so important, that I'm behaving appropriately. A good friend of mine in Nashville talks about this idea a lot, and I've borrowed it from him. Adrian Davis is his name. But he said, if you have a bad boss, do your kids know the name of the boss? Does your spouse know the name of the boss? And you know what they do? If you have a good boss, they probably know the name, right? But they for sure if you have a bad one.
Mm.
And so if you're thinking about, as a leader, not that you necessarily care what they're saying about you, but you should, meaning that this is a person of integrity, this person I can trust, this person has my back, this person has my best interest, they want me to be better. I want everybody to be better than I am. It really doesn't take much. It's a pretty low bar, right, to be better than I am, but I want them to be better. But if you're constantly thinking about, what are they taking home every day from their interactions with you?
Yes.
Are you making their home life better or worse? And there's plenty of stories I could share with that. I won't now, but because we have plenty of other things to talk about. But that's what comes to my mind.
Yeah. I love that safety. Psychological safety is something that's been high on the list
Mm-hmm.
for particularly those in the human resources field
Mm-hmm.
over the last handful of years.
Yes.
And thus in turn, ideally, also for leaders
Right.
and what it all entails. And much to the point that was made, in the prior episode, talking about that foundational trust. But that is safety.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I looked at it from that side, but I also looked at it from the care that my leader would give my career,
Mm-hmm.
and is my career safe with my
Exactly.
leader?
Ah.
And does my boss, I hate the word boss,
Yeah.
but I mean, we have to use it. But does my leader have my career development in mind? Because especially when I'm young and I didn't know what I was doing, did I have somebody that was helping me decide what I wanted to be when I grow up? And I'm still looking for that leader, by the way. Just kidding. My current leader might be listening. So, but no, I think, and that to me, and again, you want to go home and share with, whether it's your family or it's your friends, you want to share hopefully good things about your experience at work. But ultimately, when I know that you care about my career, and for me, is where I feel the most endearment and trust to that leader. And subsequently, we talked about in last episode, retention and wanting to be around them more. And me personally as a leader, having somebody invest in my career, that has been my intention with my folks, is to invest in them and guide them, because I know they will not always be with me. If I've done a good job, they're going to go on beyond me to other places. And so my hope is that they will remember me fondly and maybe take some of those lessons and pay it forward with their team.
And that's a great legacy,
Mm-hmm.
right? As a leader. It's one of the important questions that I ask leaders when I'm working with them. What do you want your legacy to be? And so, because I'm so passionate about courage, that always comes back to how do you build that muscle and so forth. And one of the things that you touched on when we last talked, Kent, was emotional intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give us some insights from your perspective on how emotional intelligence plays into being courageous as a leader?
Well, when I think about emotional intelligence, I think about 4 big areas, but it starts where I always started, and that is you have to start with yourself. I have to be trustworthy. I have to have my act together. I have to, if I overreact, go apologize, fix it, right? Don't assume it's going to get better. Think, as some people I know say, steel sharpens steel. Yeah, right. That's a way to say I can be a jerk and it's okay. We'll all be jerks together. We're not in the military anymore and can't expect people to do. And even then, when I was a young soldier, I thought, well, how do I want my soldiers to go home, and how do I want our team to be, right? Because in this case, it wasn't life and death every day, but you sure saw the people on the other side of the border there with a lot of weapons pointing our way. So I think it's first start with yourself and make sure that I'm doing the right things in terms of my own emotional intelligence and safety and et cetera, et cetera. And then I need to think bigger than the way I see the world, right? Because it's, for example, how do people want to be recognized? What's important to them? What do they care about? So on and so forth. And so the more I can understand my team members and what they value, in business school, I had a professor who we all loved. Both years, we ranked him as the #1 professor. He was a retired Westinghouse executive. He'd done it all, and then he'd gone back and done his 2 PhD, and now he was teaching this MBA program. And he one day said, in the middle of the class, 80 students, he said, here's the problem for all of you. You all think you're going to be the CEO in 10 years. And most everybody on your team thinks they're going to be about the same job in 10 years. And so you're thinking about it completely differently than the average person.
Mm-hmm.
And so you need to lead and manage and work with them accordingly, and not thinking they're trying to get to the next job, the next thing. And that was me. I was thinking, I want to be in this job for 2 years. I'm going to go to that job. Then I'm going to go to this plan. I want to do this thing, and so on and so forth. But the average person just doesn't think that way. I don't know why I'm wired there. Obviously, it's a deficiency that, you think you want to run the world. You think you're this smart person or whatever, and you're actually not, but you think you are, right? And religion in your own mind is what I jokingly say to my wife sometimes. But so emotional intelligence is recognizing, just as that professor said, they don't want to be the CEO. They don't all want to write books. They don't all want to be on TV. They all don't want to be on Fox News being interviewed about their new execution book. Which we were, and then COVID hit, so no one ever saw the episode.
Oh no!
So it's like, great, that episode. Just the week after we went into the lockdown, that no CEO was calling us about that. But I think that's a huge part of it, getting outside of your own way and saying what's important to them, what do they value, what are they trying to accomplish, and to me that's a big part of emotional intelligence, and recognizing that they do see it differently. It's not they might see it differently. They being everyone sees it differently than you do. So if I can continually keep that mindset of we're not communicating effectively because I think we're communicating, we're not. They're not really understanding the way I'm saying it, and it's not their fault. It's just we're two different people.
Yeah.
And the same that their expectations and goals are different than mine. I mean, who in the world sets a goal to impact 1 million people in a year? But you know what? I was on the phone with China last night, and this morning I was on the phone with our licensee in India. I mean, those are 2 big countries. We're going to reach 1 million people this year with our partners in these other parts of the world. So, and if we don't, we sure gave it every effort.
You shot high.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
It wasn't like, well, we'll just do 500,000. Just
Right.
500,000. That's all.
If you set it high, your thoughts are not as limited.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. Awesome.
That's right.
when I met you, one of the things that was really memorable to me was the story of how you came to work for Covey, and the perseverance that you set forth to see that goal come to fruition. And I would love for our listeners to hear how, the courage that it must have taken to say, I'm going to do something completely different, and I'm going to achieve this goal. So would you share that with us?
Sure. So at the last plant I was at, Kimberly-Clark, everyone on my team was older than I was, and they never got any development or training. So I was always reading books and going to training to bring it back to my team, and then hopefully they would bring it back to other people, their teams, right? So I went to Franklin Quest was the name of the company then, time management seminar, and I loved it. I got a planner. I thought it was great. Brought it back, bought everybody planners, did all this work, and as I was there, I thought, wow, this is what I was really meant to do. When I remember, I'm a finance guy in an operations role. I had no no business doing development or training other than I'm this voracious reader and became a voracious reader because I thought if I'm going to be better, I got to read and got to develop my people and bring things new to them all the time. So I decided I wanted to do that. So I reached out to the vice president of marketing and consulting for Franklin Quest, parent company of the original Covey Leadership and Franklin Quest that became the same company. But he said, I get 5 resumes a day for this job.
I bet.
5 a day. Now, this is 30 years ago, right?
Yep.
And he said, so what have you got that's different? I see your finance operations guy. What do you got? And so I made a little video and I sent it to him, and it obviously wasn't very good because I didn't know what I was doing. But he said, we don't have any openings at the moment. I said, fine, I'll call you in a couple of weeks. So I did. I called him in 2 weeks. I had a planner. I planned it out in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I called, and he wasn't there, and I left a message with his assistant. And then I said to her, well, tell him I'll call him in 2 weeks. So I called every 2 weeks for 10 months. And all I just said, hey, it's Kent Vaughn again with Kimberly-Clark in South Carolina, just seeing if you had any openings. And one time I called and said, hey, I'm going to be on vacation in 2 weeks, so I won't call you. So he wouldn't miss my call, right? So I'm like, why did the guy call? Well, it's funny. I was on that cruise ship for our 10th anniversary, and in my office phone, I got, because we didn't have cell phones back then, right?
Mm-hmm.
I got back to my office, and there was a message saying, hey, this is so-and-so from Frank and Covey. We're doing a hiring day in Atlanta. Are you still interested? And I thought, I've called every 2 weeks for 10 months. You think I'm not interested?
Nope. I've had the cruise, got it out of my system.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like,
What?
So, yeah. And then I went and gave a presentation and made a couple of big mistakes in the presentation. And the guy called me the next day and hired me. Partially because I had solved the mistake. I'd made mistakes, but it didn't stop me, right? So,
yes.
But I had decided that this was important enough to me that I wasn't going to miss out because they didn't understand.
Mm.
And then, interestingly enough, a few months into it, I was talking to my mentor, and I said, I would do this for free. Don't tell my mortgage company, don't tell my wife, but I would do this for free. I felt that way about, impacting thousands of people every month. It was incredible.
So what, in terms of courage, because for some folks, they just struggle with the first step.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give somebody that struggles with courage to make a change? It doesn't have to be a big change.
Right.
We talk about that a lot, but what advice would you give people when they're struggling with just taking that first step towards something new or different or out of their box?
Well, I think it goes back to the old Nietzsche, if I can understand any why, I can accomplish any how. If I can understand the why I accomplish any how, and a bunch of people said that in different ways. So I think it's first, why is it you want to do this, whatever this is? Have the conversation with the employee, seek another job, change careers, whatever it might be. Really get clear about what it is you want to do and why you want to do it. And then, of course, how you're going to do it. But so often people don't do because they really don't believe they can or they should or they're deserving of it. But if the why is important enough to you, then you find a way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately what I think. I mean, when COVID came a few years ago, 5 years ago, it destroyed our business. It absolutely destroyed us. But I wasn't going to give up. I wasn't going to live on. So if I had to live off investments and selling things, whatever, I would do that. And that's what I did. It was important enough that I just kept going. And then, your wife eventually says, well, how long are we going to do this? Well, and I set a plan. We're going to do this much by this time. If we don't, I'll leave. And sure enough, we did. And then the next quarter, we doubled that. And then we doubled that. And it's like, okay, all right. But I think it's always going back to, so why in the world are you doing this?
Mm-hmm.
I think. So at least for me, that's what I always go back to.
I love that. I think about the moment of doubt you have when you're about to take that step.
Yeah.
I always tell myself personally, you got to power through because what you want on the other side of this is important. And that momentary feeling of self-doubt is something that will always get you if you do not power through.
That's exactly right. And I would add to that that the thing that often overwhelms people is they see this myriad of things they could do. And so what I say to people all the time is, what are 1 or 2 things you will do this week? What are 1 or 2 things you will do? There's the old, what could you do? What should you do? What will you do? Well, get to the will. What's the 1 or 2 things? And by Friday night or Saturday evening or whatever it is, I'm going to have done these 1 or 2 things. And you might say, well, that's not very much. I made my 1 call every 2 weeks. And eventually, and in fact, that guy and I became great friends, and we became peers later, and we joked for years. Everyone we'd ever meet, every new client we'd meet, say, "Oh yeah, can't call me for 10 months." Da 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 da. And it became this great thing. In fact, he reached out to me the other day because he was finally retiring. but it is dialing it back to what are one or two things I will do this week. That's the other thing I think gets people's heads out of their minds. I mean, I didn't write. First book I wanted to write was 25 years ago, and I thought, I see what Stephen does, and he travels the world and this and that. I don't want to do that. I already travel too much. And eventually, so I'd gone way too far, right? So then I had to back up and say, okay, why is it I really want to do this? And that's what motivated me to write the first book.
Outstanding. And I think that is really brings it full circle for why we wanted Kent to join us for this conversation. As Denise and I had reflected on the 7 habits of highly effective people and the importance of starting with why we do what we do. But I especially love the challenge of building that courage through identifying 1 or 2 things that I will do this week and making that commitment. We're delighted to have had you join us again, Kent, for a great conversation. And I'm with Denise. We could probably do like 2 more. And we may call on you to do that.
I was going to say, will you come back? Because, we got our listeners may demand it.
That's all right.
Knoxville's not far from Chattanooga, so I'm happy to come. Yeah, thank you. It's been an honor to be here.
Yeah, we appreciate that. Will you let our listeners know how to get in touch with you, please?
Sure. So one of our websites is blazeperformance.io. GetClearLiving.com or ClearPerformanceCoaching.com is where we do our coaching stuff as well. So let us know how we can, serve you.
Wonderful. Thank you again.
Thank you for joining us today for Candor and Courage at Work.
We hope you found some inspiration and encouragement in today's episode.
For more information or to connect with us, visit our website, candorandcourageatwork.com, and be sure to download future episodes wherever you listen.